Hello, thank you to everyone who is joining us today for a showing of work by Spring 2020 New Media Fellow Myles de Bastion. Myles is debuting Virtual Worlds Made Accessible Beyond Sound, a project that aims to solve the design challenges of real-time captioning and sign language in digital 360-degree environments. This project incorporates sign language and AI-generated captioning as a nonverbal means to craft social virtual reality experiences. Myles de Bastion is an artistic director, musician, and creative altruist who develops technology and art installations that enable sound to be experienced as light and vibration. He is dedicated to making performance arts more accessible by augmenting traditional performance mediums with interactive, multisensory technologies. His work has appeared in the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, the Portland Art Museum, and on the Jimmy Kimmel Live show. He has built large-scale installations for music festivals and Grammy Award-winning jazz artist Esperanza Spalding. Myles is also the founder and board president of CymaSpace, a Portland-based nonprofit that focuses on making cultural events inclusive for the deaf and hard of hearing. This presentation is the closing exhibition for the 2020 season of the New Media Fellowship. Open Signal's New Media Fellowship supports Portland-based artists in the deep exploration of the artistic, technical, and social implications of immersive technologies. The residency includes an intensive 4-month mentorship with local media arts innovators, as well as full access to the resources at Open Signal, including a large technology library, immersive media, production studios, and staff support. The New Media Fellowship is made possible with support from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Jackson Foundation, and the Regional Arts and Culture Council. Please join us after Myles's presentation for a Q&A with the artist. If you have any questions that come up, please feel free to leave them as a comment. You can watch with us live on Facebook and comment there. We're also streaming to YouTube, and you can leave them there, and I will be sure to pass them on to the artist. All that being said, thank you. I will be passing it off to Myles.
Whoa. Virtual reality. Virtual reality, or VR, is incredible. The tech is innovative, and people are creating brand new ideas and developing them every day. What exactly is virtual reality? It's work, it's play, it's social, but it's more than that. Unfortunately, virtual reality is not accessible. VR may be new and innovative, but we need a lot more work to be done. Big tech companies that make VR hardware and software developers typically do not consider people who may have different bodies. For example, people who do not hear, do not see, or have other various physical disabilities are not considered and therefore are not able to access VR technology. That means disability communities are further marginalized and fall further behind in these conversations. We want people with disabilities to have equal access and equitable opportunities to VR technology. We are making this happen and bridging that gap, closing it quickly every day. Those that use Samsung, Apple, Facebook, or any other social media and technology, pay attention. This is for you. My name is Myles de Bastion. I am an artistic director, a designer, and I am deaf. I cannot hear. I prefer sign language as my mode of communication. And visual information facilitation works best for me, not spoken auditory information. I depend on accurate captioning and sign language every day. And in virtual reality, captions and sign language have very little support. And I want to change that now. We have started research and design project that I'm calling Virtual Worlds Made Accessible Beyond Sound. The goal of my project is to solve design challenges for captioning in 360 virtual environments and virtual worlds. My presentation focuses primarily on the use and design of 360 perspectives, not tech codes. Hardware, goggles, and other software is ever changing. My goal is to establish designs and concepts that are universally applicable and do not change. These designs and concepts will be able to apply to any number of virtual reality applications and technologies. We do not want to pigeonhole ourselves into specific technologies or developers. We want to help bridge the gap using these new designs and concepts that will be universally applicable. You can see on the screen here, there are various examples of problems we're trying to solve. Design and placement, unpredictability of conversations and discussions around VR, and cultural access, again, specifically for deaf and hard of hearing people. I'd like to go a little bit more in depth into each of these points. Captioning in virtual reality must be intelligent. Why is that? Suppose that I'm using virtual reality hardware, such as an eyepiece, to look around. The captions must be able to follow intelligently where I'm looking. Currently, captions don't know the direction that I am looking, so we need the virtual reality headset to respond to specific movements and be aware of where the viewer is looking within the virtual reality environment. Traditional captioning is run on standard systems that typically display words at the bottom of a screen in boxes. You've all seen the captions that pop up at the bottom of a TV screen when captions are on. This functionality does not work the same in virtual reality. If the captions are at the bottom of my sightline and I were to look around left or right, those captions would not move with me and be stuck at the bottom of the screen at my forward view. It is important that the headset moves those captions up and moves them directionally depending on where I or any other viewer may be looking in the virtual environment. We need to be able to see and catch those captions. How do we make this tech work? Well, it can be a little confusing, so let me show you. Right now, as you can see, the captions are displayed at eye level within the headset. If the user were to move around in the virtual environment, you can see that the captions remain in place and move around with the viewer. However, this is still not accessible. It's confusing to know who is speaking. We also don't know where various sounds may be coming from. If there are multiple people chatting and creating words that pop up in the captions, it's hard to know which one is speaking and who's saying what. These captions appear at the same time, and there's no clear way to differentiate different people's thoughts. In a virtual reality headset, you also have a limited view. You do not have the peripheral vision that you would have without it. Therefore, captioning on the left and right, moving around to show where people may be coming from, again makes it inaccessible. You are limited to the view that you have within the VR headset, which can make the visibility a little bit troubling when you have captions moving across your sightline. So how do we solve these various problems of directionality and distance of sound? Virtual reality captions, as you can see happening right now, need to be aware of the environment. Who is speaking, what is the context, and what other sounds may be occurring in that environment. How do we represent that in captions? Maybe who's speaking on the left or who's speaking on the right. Maybe we can position the captions over those people. This is one solution. This means that we move the caption box, instead of being in the center of our sightline, above the person who is speaking in the environment. As you can see, the characters on the left and right of me have alternating caption boxes that represent the conversation moving between the two individuals. The captions are not at the bottom of the sightline or below the person, because if I were to be using American Sign Language or any other hand gestural language, they would be blocking the view. Therefore, the captions are placed above our head for visibility. The captions must also have 3D spatial awareness and be able to move along the Z-axis and be visible as people are looking left, right, or around that individual. Moving in a 3D space and being able to understand the distance between people while still having access to the captions. As you can see, the captions will move and stay at the front instead of being a fixed panel in the space. You will not see the side of the captioning box, but instead the box will move with you so that regardless of how you are viewing the individual speaking, you are able to read their captions. It is much easier to see the captions if you are closer to that person speaking in the distant or within the virtual space. Further distance makes the captions smaller. I call this style of captioning environmental captions. One problem with environmental captions is this. Suppose that I wanted to look to my side, maybe to the right of this space. As you can see, when I look away, I'm missing the captions. I no longer have access to the information. How can we solve this problem? We'll add in our headlock again. So if the user is to look to the left or the right, let me show you what would happen. As you can see, I'm unable now to see which person is speaking, but I am able to see the captions of their conversation. Let's look again in the virtual environment back at the individuals. You can see that the captions have automatically shifted back over the characters. Having both of those supports on for environmental captioning, both the environmental captioning above the individuals and that headlock, allows for accessibility. Now, the narrow view of the virtual reality headset. Suppose I were to look to my left. You can see that the captions are there, but there is no information or indicator on where that sound is actually coming from within the space. If we can add an arrow to represent that, let's see what happens. Can you see that small arrow that is moving around the edge of the caption box? That is the indicator of the direction the sound is coming from. You can also add other examples of where someone is speaking from instead of an arrow, perhaps by using the person's name or a different color. I personally prefer the arrow, but it does not always accurately represent who is talking. We do need to improve the arrow, maybe make it bigger, perhaps have an attached line to the person that is actually speaking to easier track who is speaking within a conversation while looking away. These are pieces of the technology that are still in development. Another piece is distance, how far away you are from the person who's speaking in the virtual space. As you can see now, I'm far away from the conversation. As sound naturally travels through the air, it becomes weaker. This is why when you are farther away, a sound will appear to be quieter. This is similar to the opacity or the clearing of the words that appear in the caption box. As you can see, the further away that you are from the conversation, the softer or more opaque the captions appear to be, whereas if you are closer, the easier it is for you to read it and the darker the colors become. They're more contrasted, much stronger, and represent that distance and quietness comparison that you can that people experience with hearing sound. So suppose that I was chatting with someone in VR. Where would my captions be? It's important for me to be able to see my own captions because when I am speaking, oftentimes automatic captions will have a lot of errors. I need to be able to see my captions and be able to repair those errors and make sure that my message is clear, repeat myself, or perhaps the person who is communicating with me is hearing, they also need appropriate access. These accurate captions are important, but where would I put them? I can't put them below me and I can't put them above my head. If my captions were above me, I'd constantly be having to look up above me to read my own captions. So self-captions must move within my virtual headset, within the middle, and be accessible for me.
The relationship of me to the captions for my utterances is important. That placement is important. Those of you who have used virtual reality will know that conversations are unpredictable at times. They're not scripted, and there can be any number of participants in a virtual conversation in the virtual space. Those conversations could be in different languages, spoken or signed. There may also be various background noises. My question is, how do we control for that in an accessible version of a VR space? First, we need to understand the nature of the captions or the conversations being had. Are they scripted or are they extemporaneous or live? I think we need to build to accommodate both situations. In Unreal Engine, there are systems in development to support pre-recorded or scripted dialogue. Timed caption files can be loaded into the software so that the scripted dialogue will be appropriately displayed at the time that it's spoken in the appropriate place in the virtual environment. It's also important to be able to support the functionality of live captions. Auto detection or automated speech detection is a technique that can be employed. However, it's challenging. Cloud services that allow for this and the compute required can be expensive. Because of that, we are now exploring other options for supporting this functionality that might not rely on cloud computing. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done and more research to be conducted. What I really do want to drive home, though, is that scripted and live captions both need to be supported, and the way that they appear in the virtual environment is the same. We haven't yet talked about the size of the group of people having conversations in a virtual space. From what we've seen so far, most conversations are between two interlocutors. But what if we had a larger group? Perhaps 3 people are engaged in conversation. In this example, the environmental captions help with clarity. The user can clearly distinguish who is the author of which caption. It can become precarious when multiple speakers are engaged in conversation, because captions can obfuscate the captions of one speaker can obfuscate the captions of another, and when they become layered, it's impossible to read them. At this point, you can see that the captions are starting to block one another. Perhaps the opacity of the captions makes them easier to see through. However, stacking them in a manner on top of one another rather than directly blocking each other would make them more easily visible. Proximity to the captions is also a challenge, and it's a complicated space where more development work is necessary. I'm eager to explore different ways of displaying captions for larger groups. I've got one more example I can share with you. Oftentimes, in a virtual space, multiple conversations will be occurring simultaneously. With headlocked captions, it's not a problem to distinguish who's saying what. If I look to one side and then look to the other side, you can see the conversation that's further away from me becomes dimmer. Now I'm listening in to this conversation that I'm focusing on with my eyes. And obviously, you can toggle back and forth by simply turning your head. The darker captions coincide with the conversation that you are more closely attending to. More development work is necessary here, especially in situations where there may be unpredictable or unscripted dialogues. More questions for exploration. Let's continue. Let's talk a little bit about what I mean by captions for cultural accessibility. You could find yourself in VR talking to somebody who speaks a language other than the one that you use. Someone who speaks French and English could easily strike up a conversation in a virtual environment. It's entirely possible. With developments in automated captioning, there is the potential for linguistic translation, so that somebody who speaks French would see the English speaker's captions in their native language, and vice versa. Again, the cost of cloud services for translation like this can be cost prohibitive. It's not impossible. More support for different languages can be added, but right now it comes with a cost. Deaf and hard of hearing sign language users are another cultural group, and for that particular segment of the population, there's very limited cultural accessibility in the VR space. I can talk a little bit about why that is. This is a traditional VR headset. This is actually an Oculus Quest VR headset, which is great technology. It's able to recognize the shape of the human hands. When a user wears this hardware, it is accessible, but only to a point. There are certain limitations when it comes to cultural accessibility, and I can show you why and explain more. The recognition of hand shapes is successful only to a point. When hands come into contact or overlap one another, they become indistinguishable, and this can be problematic when sign language depends on clearly being able to see the shape of the hands. In sign language, it's important to be able to distinguish the shape of both hands at all times. But as you can see, when I put my hands one in front of another, that becomes difficult. Now you can see it from my perspective. I'm just fingerspelling letters of the sign language manual alphabet. This is the letter K. You can see that it's not exactly perfectly represented in the virtual space. So when you can't detect all of the digits of the hand, all of the fingers, every nuance of a letter, information can be lost in translation. This is the letter N in sign language. You can see that thumb placement is not exactly clear. Distinguishing between an M and an N is challenging. This is the letter K that I'm holding up right now. This is the letter R. You have to cross your fingers. That makes it hard to see both fingers. Again, I just want to show that this is a challenge in terms of cultural accessibility. It might not be a problem for people who don't depend on sign language, but for deaf and hard of hearing users, this is a challenge. The technology has not quite caught up with the ability to recognize the hand shapes that are so important in American Sign Language. And as I have said, that is problematic linguistically for communication. I'm optimistic and hopeful that technology companies will take on this challenge. I have seen that companies like Facebook have made improvements in their ability to detect the shapes of human hands, and I'm excited to see what promising things may come from that. Everyone, hold on one moment, please. We're just making a technical adjustment. Technology remains a barrier for the deaf and hard of hearing communities in terms of communication ability in the virtual world. If accommodations cannot be made for sign language users, deaf and hard of hearing people will continue to be marginalized in this space. It's important that hardware and software developers take active steps to including people who are deaf and hard of hearing so that they may be equitably included. I'm confident that as in future generations of hardware, as more technology is developed, this technology will continuously improve. Sign language recognition is another barrier to success in this space. Sign language detection technology must be able to detect hand shapes so that deaf and hard of hearing signers may sign naturally in the virtual space, and so that captions can accurately reflect what they are communicating. But sign language is not just on the hands. The way that deaf and hard of hearing signers use their face and the space around them also have important grammatical and contextual information. There are a great many nuances in any sort of physical gestural communication, and technology must be able to capture this information. Again, while it is challenging, there are people working in this space, and I'm eager to see improvements in future iterations. I know that the big tech companies like Google, Microsoft, and Facebook are all working in this space. If they can continue to work with deaf professionals who are coming together towards a common goal, we will see great improvements in the space of sign language detection and recognition. As a deaf technologist and technology enthusiast, I'm eager to see changes in the very near future. I've shown you these things that I think are necessary. Why does it matter, you may ask? Well, for one thing, involving people who are deaf and people with disabilities in this space will increase diversity in terms of the ideas for innovation in virtual spaces. Greater inclusion will also help to accelerate mass adoption of VR technology. The more people we include, the more people will adopt it. When people don't feel like the technology is supportive of their community and their needs, they will be slow to adopt a new technology. Ultimately, when any experience is accessible, everyone benefits at the end of the day. So you may wonder, what's next? At this juncture, I'm looking for support from people in the VR hardware space, makers with skills and motivation. I'm engaged in conversations with different companies. Various stakeholders are interested in supporting sign language detection and recognition, but I'm looking for a serious commitment, an investment of resources to take this to the next level. I'm hopeful that as a result of this project, more awareness will be raised of the problem areas in this space, and more people will step forward with solutions. My immediate plan to share this work is through the release of plugin tools for Unreal Engine. I would like to empower other VR developers to use what I've developed and expand and improve upon it to include sign language detection and recognition in their applications. I believe that is the pivotal next step. When that has been made open source so that everyone can use it, and more developers are widely using it, I can then continue my work on my application. My plan is to release a VR application called Beyond Sound. I intend it to be for deaf and hearing users who want to participate in virtual spaces to come and socialize, regardless of what language they use. I'm hoping that captions will be the great equalizer in these interactions. This has been a fantastic project. I hope that if you've enjoyed this presentation, you will share it with friends and colleagues in the VR space. If you're interested in continuing this conversation, you can reach out to me on social media, Facebook, Twitter. I'm available. And I will be communicating new information as it becomes available on those channels. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you again so much. And please feel free to reach out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, with any other further questions or curiosities. Again, my name is Myles de Bastion. Thank you so much. Take care. Hello, everyone. So this is Myles. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Myles, I wanted to ask about the development of this project. As we've said, this is part of your fellowship with OpenSignal, but is this building upon work that you were doing previously to the start of your residency? Basically, yeah, how long have you been working on this particular project?
Yeah, so we had a question facilitated through Daniela. I'm going to go ahead and summarize that for everybody for accessibility's sake. The question was if I've been working on this project previous to my fellowship with OpenSignal. The answer is that I've been involved in a residency, media fellowship, artist residency since around 2019. So of course, right before COVID hit, I started that residency. During that time, I was involved in a number of festivals, traveling, or at least I was supposed to be traveling the last year with other artists, and setting up exhibits in both OpenSignal's location and other locations. However, COVID happened and our plans changed. So since the beginning of my involvement in this project, the project itself has evolved. Especially in relation to my artist work and my professional work. A lot of my focus has changed because of COVID-19. Previously, we focused on relationships with the deaf community, specifically in fields of visual sound relating to music and entertainment. We specifically focused on technology for live physical spaces that had music and other forms of entertainment. and provided accessibility, interpreters, technology systems that set up visual sound, such as blinking lights that were reactive to the sound in the space. That being said, with COVID-19, all venues, or at least most of them, were shut down. For the last 18 months, we've been on a readjustment phase, trying to get our bearings a little bit, adjusting to online technologies like Zoom being the primary choice for all communications. And as you know, a lot of those small windows and tech chatting applications are inaccessible to deaf and hard of hearing people. That means that we've been waiting for 18 months before Zoom finally put auto captions into their technologies. Just recently, this is a feature that was added to Zoom. 18 months we've been waiting. Hearing people were able to dive right into the technological change. Deaf people have been struggling through the entire pandemic with this technology change. Going into a 2D virtual communication world has been a struggle. And it's very, very limiting for the deaf and hard of hearing community. That's what's so interesting about the 3D world. It's friendlier for sign language, which in itself is a 3D visual language. It's crucial that people have that spatial relation with each other while signing and interacting with each other, being able to interact using directional sign languages with each other. That directionality and flexibility is so important. My dream is to set up an online 3D space for deaf and hard of hearing people to meet and feel comfortable communicating in their native signed language with access to anyone, deaf or hearing, within that virtual space. My primary concern is if the VR industry and the tech that they develop continue to be inaccessible. How long will we have to wait for deaf people to be included? That's why I have taken on this responsibility. I have the technical skills that I can apply to this project, and therefore I want to use them. So I am excited for further partnerships and fellowships. So that was quite a long answer, but I hope that that answered the question.
Perfect. One more question. I know that you had some collaborators that you worked with on this project. Obviously, this is a very involved and technically complicated project. And can you talk about who you collaborated with, who was advising, and any mentorship that helped you along the way?
Yes, we are so thankful to Open Signal support that allowed us to have mentorships and technology support. I definitely want to share who else has been involved in this project and helped out. Firstly, a good friend of mine that lives in the UK, which is actually where I grew up. This person is a school friend who I contacted and asked if they wanted to be involved in the project. They were very interested in the Unreal Engine technology. They're involved a little more in the back end, but we are learning a lot from each other in the process. They're picking this up very quickly and developing a lot of new skills that we are able to apply in the Unreal Engine. and then use logic within Unreal Engine. We don't need code at all. However, we do need to understand the logistics of each and how the technologies and the information can be easily transitioned and shared between codes and other softwares that are being used within Unreal Engine so that captions and other technologies can be shared as we're creating these designs. That's something to consider. My friend's name is Genia, Genia, last name Penksik, Penksik. I have another mentor through OpenSignal. Their name is Sonya, Sonya, Neunzert, Neunzert. They have a lot of experience with Unreal Engine as well. It was so great for me to be able to ask questions of them anytime that I got stuck. They were more than willing to have a meeting with me anytime and work together with me to use work time efficiently online, virtually, and really in any other way that I needed to help continue me to feel motivated through this project towards the ultimate goal. Of course, the process has felt very slow. Anytime that you learn a new skill, that's going to be the experience, right? I was so grateful and appreciative of these mentors being able to share work between each other and of course with me. So thank you to you both. I do have one more thing that I wanted to add in terms of partnership. I am involved currently in a group called W3C XR, Captioning Work Group. W3C is responsible for working on establishing policies and systems for equitable technology access within VR spaces. I attend meetings and learn a lot of different skills from them. There are a number of creative people involved in that tech and that work group, and we actively support each other in learning from their shared experience. Soon we will have another collaborator that we will be adding in. The CREST Network, CREST Network. They are involved with Gallaudet University. They specifically focus on deaf and sign language technologies. We will soon have an online meeting with them and host a large virtual conference together where we will show presentations, including a presentation on my work and a number of other people working in the similar field. Lastly, thank you to the nonprofit, my nonprofit, CymaSpace, CYMASPACE. CymaSpace has allowed me the space and the time to work on this project and focus on that. Thank you. Thank you again, OpenSignal team as well. Thank you so much. It has been really helpful making my way through this process to have you. Okay, it seems at this time there are no further questions. Again, I am available for further outreach at the information here on my right, your left. Again, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, any social media, I am at Myles de Bastion, MYLESDEBASTION. thank you all so much. And that's it. I guess I'll pass it to who's ever closing out.
Thank you, Myles. Thank you to everyone who joined today. Please feel free to reach out to Myles, as he mentioned. Thank you, Myles, for this incredible work, this important work. I also highly encourage folks to check out SimaSpace, simaspace.org. This stream will, of course, be archived, so please share with anyone who you think might be interested. Thank you to the NEA, to RAC, and the Jackson Foundation for making this project possible. Thank you very much, and we will close it out. Thank you again, Myles.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.